I'd love for you to begin with, I think your childhood and your upbringing is really important and central to who you are today. Take us back to those times. What was that like for you? Who were you as a child? What learnings did you take from your childhood?
I would say in my earlier years, I was a very shy, quiet little girl, which surprises a lot of people now. But I was terrified. I had a very volatile upbringing. I was hit a lot, and at the time I thought I just wasn't behaving well. It took a long time for me to realize it just wasn't okay, the things that were happening to me, because I would just kind of flippantly tell a friend something that happened, and they would have this look of horror on their face and say, Chris, that's not okay. And over time, I, learned that being me wasn't okay. And I I was extremely athletic for a couple reasons. One, you were loved in my home if you were an athlete, so I certainly did it to be loved, to get attention. But also, it kept me out of the house. It was a safety net, and I did very well in athletics, mainly because I had to. There was definitely no acceptance for any form of mediocrity in my home, in education or in athletics. What at the time I didn't love, I wanted to dance, and I had friends that were cheerleaders, and my dad said his daughter was not going to be a bimbo. Yeah, so it was a lot of, just really trying to please and not recognize. I mean, I didn't know my parents were narcissists. That took years for me to realize. I just thought this was normal, and I thought they loved me, and I think they loved me in their way. It's just when you're not taught unconditional love for yourself, you don't know how to give that to a child. So love for me growing up was entirely conditional. A lot of threats, a lot of dangling of the carrot, if you will, in many ways. So there's a lot of manipulation, financial, emotional, and yeah, it was a whole mishmash of trying to survive on a lot of levels, because once I hit my teenage years, when I say survive, like literally I had some really scary things happen to me, one of which I had a skiing accident that it's pretty much a miracle I survived. I went through a lot of emotional turmoil because of my accident. I wasn't playing sports anymore, which, as I said earlier, if you played sports in my home, you were loved. And now I wasn't playing sports anymore. No, I was not loved. And yeah,
How old were you when this accident happened?
I was 15.
You're 15. Oh, so
Yeah.
like first year of high school, basically.
Yes. And my parents had actually moved from New Jersey to California 3 months before. So my whole life got turned upside down, and then it got turned upside down again with this accident. And it was very severe. I broke my back, I broke my pelvis, I needed a blood transfusion. It wasn't fun. And not a little more than a year later, I had two very dear friends die. In the same, my great grandmother, who I was named after, passed away. My dog died. It was just having like all these experiences clustered, and then having parents who didn't really accept that I was sad. So I definitely fell into a form of depression, although I didn't know that. Like, I would go to bed as early as possible, hoping that it would just mean that the day was shorter, and just kind of wake up the next day and just start all over. But I was really sad. I would ask the universe, God, I was struggling with religion at the time, but I would just ask, like, why didn't you let my accident kill me? Because living in that house was very emotionally taxing.
When you grow up like that as a child, just, you know, that's your normal. You just think that's normal. That's just the way things are and the way things will always be. There really is no awareness of what other children's experiences are or what other families might be like or could be like. When did you come to the realization, besides, your friends making those offhand comments sometimes, when did you seriously come to the realization like, wait, this is not right, or, you know, maybe it didn't have to be this way. When did you come to that realization?
I'd say in high school is when I was gaining awareness. I wouldn't say I fully understood, but I think I knew deep down I didn't deserve to be treated the way I was treated. And And I already was going through a lot of challenges, and to have to deal with them on top of it and the kind of things they would say and do. And it was just a very challenging time to navigate. So, yeah, I kind of just did what I could. I did have a time, actually a couple times, I left my home and stayed with my friends for time. So my friends were becoming aware, and I think that was really helpful at the time, especially their parents seeing what I was going through. I had a guidance counselor that was incredibly helpful. One time I went to her after I left my parents' home. I stayed at a friend's. I went to school the next day, and I literally walked right into her office. I was like, I really need to see you right now. I was like in tears. And she brought me in, and she brought my mom in eventually that same day to try and help me get home that day, because I really had nowhere else to go. And she gave me something I needed at that time, because my mom, well, let's just say she was being herself. This was the first time I had an outside party witness my mom in this true form that she never really showed other people.
What was that form like? Just to paint a picture.
Playing the victim and making it seem like I did everything wrong and I was the problem. And and it was really, yeah, I don't remember the exact words she was saying, but essentially that it's all my fault, and if I didn't do things the way I did and acted the way I did, that life would be easier, that kind of stuff. And she ended up storming out. And my guidance counselor looked at me, and she had this look on her face. I could tell she was just baffled. And the first thing she said to me was, "She's not right." At the time, I was 17 or 18, and those words still resonate with me. Just how powerful that was at that time. I needed that. I couldn't do much with it then, but it did something for my heart. And that woman was someone I'm still very grateful for today.
Yeah, it's powerful when you get acknowledged by another adult,
Yes.
right? That this situation that's happening to you is not right.
Yes.
You're out of that bubble of just your own family nucleus. These two adults that you were born into, and they're the role models for you. So that I can see how that was very powerful. You say that your spirit awakened, and it came with the ability to see your maternal grandfather. What sort of work were you doing spiritually and just self-development, wise? What were you doing that kind of led all up to that? What was that period of life?
Well, when I first started feeling his presence, I actually still had a relationship with my parents. So I felt like at the time, he was kind of like knocking on my door, of just letting me know he was there. I think I also was only semi-accepting of it at the time, because my mother just did not want to have any conversation about him. So when I really came on board, as I put it, is after I cut my parents off, because I really needed to heal the trauma. What I've learned over time is when you have an overactive nervous system like I did, it is really hard to connect with spirit. And having that calm nervous system was really key for me. It onboarded everything. I was suddenly doing, seeing, feeling, hearing things in ways I never had before. It was always there in a very subtle manner. I mean, I recognized it more in hindsight than anything. But at the time, I was really the first thing I was doing was going to therapy and being validated for the things I had experienced. Much like that first guidance counselor who was telling me that, she's not right. I think I needed that at first, of just hearing like the things that happened in my life were not okay. And it was okay to be angry. It was okay to be sad. It was okay to mourn and to grieve the parents I deserved and didn't have in this lifetime. So that was kind of a first step of healing my nervous system, of just feeling like I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. What are they going to do to me? What are they going to say? How are they going to hurt me? That was a really big part. And, I did a lot of tapping at the time, emotional freedom technique and EFT, if anyone is not familiar. But
What is that?
So, emotional freedom technique is most commonly known as tapping, where you're tapping different points on your body and you're essentially addressing your meridians. But by doing this, it's a way to calm the nervous system, especially through a heightened experience, or if you're also trying to just shift your energy because you are making this change on a cellular level. So by doing it, you're not just saying the words, you're also teaching your body. So for me, I was doing that kind of stuff. I was doing a ton of reading. I was reading, I think I've read practically every book that was written on having narcissistic parents and dealing with narcissistic abuse. And I had so many aha moments and surreal moments of, oh my gosh, do they all share the same playbook? I still say yes, I think they do. To just really learning that a lot of the things that I was made to feel bad about were not my fault, and I didn't deserve a lot of the treatment that I received. You know, I think I had my time of playing the victim. I will be fully transparent about that. And I think it was also important for me to own that and move beyond it. I remember when I was in therapy and my therapist told me I need to forgive. And I was like, I couldn't even think of that idea, because to me, forgiveness meant accepting everything that was done was okay. So it was really a very important experience for me to recognize forgiveness is not about saying things that were done for you to you were okay, that you're releasing energy within you so that you can move on and not carry that weight anymore.
So forgiveness is not saying that what happened to you is okay, but it's about releasing energy within you so that you can move on. I like that. I had never thought about forgiveness that way.
There's a saying people use that you cannot drink poison and expect someone else
Yes.
to die. And I think that really resonates when it comes to that. You know, when you hold on to that anger and you hold on to those memories in that way where you're allowing them to replay in your head over and over, it's drinking poison. You're literally allowing that to keep going into your body, to keep going into your energy. And why? It is a form of torture, but I think especially when it happens in your family, you look for what you could have done differently. Did I have done something to have avoided this? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? So once you move past that is when you realize, okay, forgiveness is a different path.
And was when you were able to forgive, was that when you were also able to let go of being a victim? Or how did that process work for you?
I believe I released the victim mentality first. I think forgiveness has come in waves, because I'll say there's still been things that will come up and surprise me. Like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was holding on to that still. You know, the subconscious can hold things that we're not consciously aware of until suddenly something brings it to our awareness, an experience of a sort. And then, you know, I have much more grace for myself through such periods. And I don't get upset like I used to. In the past, I would have been very frustrated. I thought I healed this and wouldn't have wanted to face it again. But, you know, energy heals in layers. So that was important for me to understand. But it's been forgiveness and victimhood is, I think, kind of hold hands in ways. And then you get to this place of release, and it's very healing.
So if you were working with someone that was still in their victim, how would you work with them, or how would you sort of guide them away from that?
Well, I like to support people in it because I feel that we're taught not to be victims. And when we're told that you're not supposed to be anything, you're more likely to live in it. But when you're just allowed to feel in that and let all the feels be felt, then it's easier to move past it. So I really like to see where they're at in that, you know, why they're still holding on to it. Because in many cases, being the victim helps someone feel safe. I could even see why my mother does it so much. And this isn't to say that I think it's a good choice, but I understand where victim mentality comes from. And it usually is a feeling of not having any power. So playing the victim actually gives you some power because people tend to pity you.
And is that how you let go of your own victim thinking, is to just let the feelings come and process the feelings? What was that process like for you?
It's definitely dark night of the soul kind of stuff where I just really had to allow myself to feel the things, to feel all the depths of those emotions that I had buried, that I had not been allowed to feel. And really, yeah, sit with that, because we're not taught to feel emotions. We're taught to bury emotions. We're taught to kind of half feel them and move on, pick yourself up, dust yourself off. That was absolutely a term used throughout most of my childhood. Stop crying. You keep crying, I'll give you something to cry about. And he meant it. So yeah, to be able to feel that, allow for that, is really important.
I can certainly relate to that experience with my own upbringing. So I know exactly what you are referring to. Not being able to process emotions or even feel emotions or even be able to understand what particular emotions feel like
Yeah.
can be very limiting in life and keep you stuck at a certain growth level
Yes.
without moving beyond that. So you said in hindsight, you'd always had this knowing beyond, that period when you started getting messages from your maternal grandfather, even though he had passed. What were those things in hindsight that when you look back now, were there any things in childhood that you experienced or your teenage years or what anything that happened that kind of foreshadowed that?
Well, I was always very good at reading people, and I would just have a sense very quickly of whether or not I felt that I would get along with them or not, or even if it had nothing to do with me, if I just didn't feel they were a good person. One example that was a standout for me, I was 14, and it was someone trying to recruit my dad to move to California, and they flew us out to, they wanted to meet the whole family and kind of essentially schmooze my dad. And as soon as I met this guy, I was like, no, this is not a good person. Like, I just felt it. I didn't know at the time, I felt like darkness around him, but now I understand that it was darkness. But at the time, I just felt this heaviness. I had like disgust. But when I was like, Dad, this is not a good person. This is not the person you're going to want to work for. He ignored me because he just thought I didn't want to move to California. And I didn't. He was certainly right, but I wouldn't have made that up. And about a year later, I still remember this because I think I was so floored. He's never said this in my life. He's like, you were right. I should have listened to you. And I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. And he said the guy's name. He's like, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And he just walked away. And I was like, wow. And I was like, can we move back? I didn't even know what to do with that.
Wow. I mean, I've had experience with narcissists. For them to even acknowledge that someone else might know something they don't know or to be right, that's huge.
Yeah, like, it's the only time that he ever gave me that kind of verbiage, but I was so certain, and I told him with all my certainty, and he did not want to believe it. He just wanted to dismiss it and tell me it was about me and my feelings, that I didn't want to go to California.
Of course.
So yes, you are absolutely right. That is not something a narcissist does, but that is how it only took about 6 to 8 months for that man to really reveal himself. And when my dad saw it, I know he heard my words.
He must have witnessed something very dark.
Yes,
then.
100%. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
He never told me, but I have no doubt.
Yeah.
This was not a good person. This was someone who was, I hate to say the word evil, but yeah.
What else happened that kind of foreshadowed this thing that happened with your maternal grandfather?
Well, I mean, I remember a lot of things are happening in high school. I remember there was a guy in one of my classes I sat next to, and he would start to say something, and then I would answer it before he really said anything. And I think it was the third time I did it, he says, "You're freaking me out. I don't know if you have ESP or something, but you seem to just know things." And it made me chuckle, but as he said it, I was like, yeah, I guess I do. And I didn't know what to do with that. I was just like, yeah, that, like, doesn't everybody? And one of the more special memories I have was after my friends had passed. They died in a car accident, and I was 16 at the time. One of them had been my first boyfriend, and although he was no longer my boyfriend, he was still someone that was special to me. And I flew back east because these were East Coast friends, and I went to visit their families. This was a couple days after the accident, just before the funerals had happened. When I was in one of their homes, I asked his mom if I could go to his room. I just felt like I needed to be there for some reason. I had no idea why, at least not then yet. And so she's like, yes, of course. And she brought me up to his room, and she gave me the space to be there by myself, which was really sweet. She shut the door, and I sat on the bed, and I was holding a stuffed animal I had given him years ago. His mom handed it to me, and she's like, he never got rid of this because it was from you. And so I held this thing, and I was crying, and I heard, look behind the books. I ignored it because I just figured, okay, that sounds weird. So I just kept crying, and then I heard again, look behind the books. And now I'm realizing I keep hearing this statement. So I look in front of me, and I see his desk, and at the back of the desk are a stack of books, but they're lined up against the wall. And now I hear again, look behind the books. So because I keep hearing it, and I'm like, all right, I'll just see whatever is being told to me. I have no idea. This was the most confusing thing I think could have happened, especially in a time of grief. So I stood up, I walk over to the desk, and I reach behind this stack of books, and there's a huge padded envelope, and I pull out the envelope, and there's nothing written on it. So it felt weird to be in my friend's room, and I felt nosy, and now I felt this need to look inside. And when I looked inside, I saw me. Every letter, every picture, everything I'd ever given him was in this envelope.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I couldn't even believe it. I mean, for one, I cried because I felt so cherished in that moment. And, to know that I was still special to him, and he obviously knew he was still special to me because he was there guiding me to this envelope to make sure that I knew. And he's probably who told me, go to my room, because why would I have asked, can I go to his room? I went to see his family. I didn't think I was going to find anything in his room. And honestly, that felt so intrusive, but I just felt that need. But yeah, that was all him. But it took me years to realize that was a natural thing I could do. I really chalked that one up to grief. I was so consumed with grief that it kind of caused a form of disassociation that allowed me to be highly intuitive. Turns out I can do that all the time. But I was so muted by my trauma of growing up that I wasn't aware of what I could do.
Now, what did you do with that envelope? Did you put it back? What did you end up doing with it?
I left it there because I was 16 at the time, and the girl he had been dating was a horrible person to me. She had bullied me quite a bit, and I kind of wanted her to see it. So I'm a little embarrassed now to say that, but that's where I was in 16-year-old grief. So I have excused it as such. But I don't know if at this time, and if I could go back, would I take it? Probably not. That was meant for him, and he just wanted to show me I still meant something to him, and I got that message very clearly.
And then when you started hearing or seeing your grandfather's spirit, how did that take place, or how did that happen?
Incrementally. At first, it was he kept giving me this weird feelings about my mom, that things weren't great, and I wasn't sure what it was, and she didn't want to talk about him, so I really couldn't validate anything. So that was when I kind of shut it off. And after I stopped talking to my parents and he started coming through stronger, my sister had known him in life. I did not, so it was hard for me to validate, and so I would ask my sister, and I realized how important she was to him. That was the only grandchild he ever knew, but became came into the room. It was like the man would practically cry, and this was not an emotional man. I was also raised to believe he was a lot like my father, and the man I had in spirit was very little like my father. Short fuse like him, sure, but nothing else that I would really have equated to him. I was fortunate also to have a relationship with my uncle, one of my mom's brothers. So when I started telling him things about his dad, he said, oh yeah, that's definitely my father, and there's no way you could have known that. So really, I think he was kind of teaching me that I could do this. It's really hard to connect with our own loved ones or people we knew in life because we kind of get in our own way, and it's really hard to be neutral because you kind of need that neutrality. But because I didn't know him, I couldn't really go off of my own memories. That was, I think, just kind of fun because I did have other grandparents in spirit already, but I knew them in life. So I would have thought it was my own, I was just having the memories of them. I also, one thing that was very interesting one time when I said to my mother something about him, I was like, I don't really think he's like Dad. And she's like, well, he was in ways, but I really think that he would have liked your father. And I heard a very clear no. That it was very clear to me my grandfather did not approve of my father. And I think I kind of needed that. So that was interesting. I know why now, but at the time, and of course I wouldn't have told my mother because she would not have been able to accept that. She just never processed his death well. He died very suddenly, and it was a terrible death. And one, like I said, she never processed. So she carried the trauma of that. So having any conversation with her was just never going to be beneficial.
It sounds like when you're getting this data coming in, it's auditory, like you hear the voice. Do you sense like a presence in the room? Do you see? Okay, so you sense a presence. Do you see things too? Or how else do you know that there's this being and it's my maternal grandfather, and like how's that information processed through you?
Yeah, at first I would feel a presence, and then I'd feel like the familiarity, like, okay, I know this person. And for him, it was mainly auditory or clairsentient, like feelings. He wouldn't show me him. And what's very interesting is as I was practicing mediumship and developing in mediumship, if he ever came forward for another medium that was reading for me, he always changed the way he looked. Sometimes he showed himself young, sometimes he showed himself older. So I found that to be very interesting. And they do that a lot. They like to reveal themselves the way they like to be remembered. And again, I knew this man so little from photographs. I mean, I think there was like 1 or 2 photos of him in the home I was growing up in. So this isn't someone I would necessarily recognize if someone just started describing them. So I think clairvoyance for him, because I didn't really know him, just never really came. I mean, I guess he could have. It just wasn't how it worked for me. When I started seeing other people in spirit, I could see them clairvoyantly. It's not my primary clair. My primary one is clairsentience. I will always get the feeling first. So I will get a sense of someone's present. I will get a sense of who they are, their personality, and that was a really big part earlier for me. I don't really do mediumship anymore because I feel more called to work with the living, but it was a very important part of my development in this work.
How else have you developed these skills that you have here? Like what kind of classes, any classes you took that were significant or led to breakthroughs? What's happened in your learning?
I wish I could say there was like breakthroughs because that feels more dramatic, but I felt like this was more subtle for me because I took a lot of classes with a lot of different teachers. It was always psychic mediumship classes where we would practice bringing in spirit and we would practice reading with the individuals we were sitting with and practice reading on them. So in doing those kinds of practices, I was able to recognize the things that like I could do very easily. Like if you give me somebody's name or show me a picture, I could tell you pretty much anything about them. And that was very surprising to me how quickly that came. Like I'd never done that before. I didn't realize I was always kind of doing that in ways. People would be like, oh, I'm dating this person. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And they tell me his name. And then I'd be like, oh, he sounds like a great guy. Or then they tell me his name. I'd be like, oh, okay. I was like, feels like a mama's boy. And like, he is a mama's boy. How do you know that? So, but it was always, again, so subtle that I wouldn't have called that a gift. I would just get a feel. But The more I started doing that kind of practice in these classes, the better I got. I think mediumship was really very good for me in honing in these abilities, strengthening them, because one thing that is really important in this kind of work, you have to exercise it. It's like a muscle. It can atrophy if you don't use it. That was very important that I did that. And I mean, now I'm pretty much doing it every day in my work, just reading people, reading their energy, reading their chakra system, letting them know what's going on in their energy body.
Get the sense that it's almost like growing up, you couldn't trust your surroundings, your physical surroundings, like, how your parents were treating you physically, what they were saying to you. And so it's almost like this thing developed because you couldn't trust your logical side of what was happening to you. So you had to rely on your feelings and your gut of like this, the students that you met or your dad's boss, like because you couldn't trust even from your closest family members what they were physically saying, treating, and doing to you. So you had to rely on the feeling that you got. That's kind of what I get the sense of.
That's 100% correct. My parents are both very good liars, and I'm very good at detecting lies, even partial truths, which my mother is a master of. My mother's so good at making up her own stories because she always uses partial truths. If you have enough partial truths in any story, it's enough to convince somebody it's real and that it happened. And she mastered that. So the way she would tell people of things that had happened that didn't happen, but because she had enough partial truths, it made it seem like I was the liar. And that was probably a really important part of my development in this work, because you're right. I was always going off of feeling, and I could only really trust myself and my gut. And my gut is definitely my strongest ability because that has been well practiced since a very young age.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, trusting their gut is a hurdle
Oh yeah.
because the logical brain comes in and says, kind of like when you were in the bedroom of your first boyfriend who had passed away. It's like you hear the knock once, you're like, no. You hear the knock come louder again, you're like, no. And then finally the third time or whatever, you hear it and you're like, okay, fine, I'll check it out.
Exactly. That was exactly it. Yeah. I even still will sometimes do that, like where I'll get like these like hits like that, and I'm just like, yeah, no, no.
Yeah. So I know you offer quite a few different things from your website. Is there one modality or one type of class that you prefer or love teaching or type of service that you love doing more than others?
Really love doing energy reads. I would say that's what I'm probably doing the most right now. And a lot of people are finding me through referrals. They'll hear of a friend or family member that had this read and they want one too because they're intrigued and they're curious what their chakras are telling them. So I do really enjoy that because I find it's like an adventure. I get to climb into someone's chakra system and see what it's going to show me. And there's always something new or different. And, no read is ever the same. And I always try to tell people that because they'll be like, with my friend, this happened. I'm like, well, I can't guarantee that's going to happen with you, that you've got different energy bodies. But it doesn't mean that you won't have something fun and that you won't, hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I do have a lot of fun with those. And then when it comes to teaching, I really love teaching. Right now I'm teaching Up-Level Your Intuition. I really love helping people further develop their intuition. I actually have a student right now. This is the second class series I've taught for her. I had one in the spring and then I'm doing one right now. And when she joined me in the spring, she kept telling me how she was a beginner. She had never done any of this work, that she couldn't do it. And now we are only 2 weeks into this 5-week series. She is doing reads on TikTok now almost daily. And she's doing an amazing job. And I love seeing that. I love seeing people come into their own energy field and seeing their intuition come online like that. Because I think because I've taken so many different classes, courses, I have put into all the things that I felt were missing, because I feel like there's a lot of information that really wasn't provided. And I decided I was not going to be a gatekeeper when it came to this work. So it was very important to me to put as much as I can out there without overwhelming, but really help people enhance their abilities, because we all have these abilities in some way or another. So when I see people that are telling me like they're doing amazing and they're crediting me for it, I'm like, no, credit yourself. You're doing the work. I just was the guide. That's it.
What sort of things have you added, and what sort of things are you not gatekeeping?
Well, first I'd like to really talk a lot about the chakras, how they're connected to the clairs. And I also like to talk a lot about brainwaves, because our brainwaves are key when it comes to connection. And also the nervous system, because it's all connected. So for example, like right now you and I are in our beta brainwaves. We're talking, we are, engaging, that's beta. When you start to now do a read, you have to switch your brainwaves at least to alpha, preferably to theta to get a deeper read. And then people who do more like trance are getting into like delta. So anyone who's like channeling someone and they're going, into themselves, that, and they do studies on this now, their brains are in delta. But when you know anything about the brainwaves, you know that they're calmer, they're slower. So hence the need for a nervous system that's regulated, because the calmer the nervous system, the calmer you can get your brainwaves to be. So I like to teach people how to switch those brainwaves.
And what's the process of that like for a total beginner? What do you teach them in the beginning to switch?
I teach them a lot
brainwaves?
of the basics, what the brainwaves are. I teach them about the chakras and why they're important to understand. I also teach them things like, if you're worried about having blocks, you have to look at your traumas, because it's our traumas that block us. So anyone who says like they think they're blocked, they probably should just be looking at what's hurting them, what's upsetting them, what traumatized them.
And what sort of exercises would those look like? Like, is it just meditation, or
To do
what do they include?
meditations and activations, and then sometimes I'll just do active exercises. I'll have them read me and my energy. I'll give them a topic, and sometimes I've just opened my energy, but when you're starting out, it's really hard to just open energy to somebody and then expect them to just get a read, because when you're first trying and you're just open, everything's coming at you and you're like, okay, I'm seeing a blue car and I'm also seeing a lake and now I'm in a building. I mean, they're all over the place. So I like to hone in. So like my most recent class, I focused on sports because, as I mentioned earlier, I was an athlete, and it's an easier one for a beginner, but it's also good for someone advanced. So like the advanced student will probably get more specific on the sports I played, whereas the beginner will get kind of a feel of the type of sports, but maybe not be able to hone in on like my favorite sport, for example. Or, so it just having, you don't always need it, but that's what I like to at least have as like a basic exercise. Sometimes I'll have people practice on each other if I have a bigger class. Right now, I have a good amount of students signed up, but not everyone can make it live, which I completely understand. It's just, we're in a chaos world right now. But so if there's enough students, I do have them practice on each other, and I'll give like a focus point of here, this is what you are going to try and read on each other. And some people prefer to do psychic, others prefer to do mediumship, and there's different aspects of how to. So yeah, a lot of times though, I really go with how I feel called. Sometimes I'll get, just this feel that I'm going to have a class series coming up. And true to form, I ignore the first one. Like, okay,
Yet again.
I'm busy. And then I wait till somebody asks me. And then it's funny, and then now I have this pattern where I'll get this feel from spirit. It's like a nudge, you're going to be teaching again soon. And then I ignore it. Okay, sure. And then somebody will email me, hey, when are you teaching your next class series? And then I say, I'm not sure, but I'll definitely keep you posted. And then within the next 2 weeks from that person, I usually have 2 more people ask me within the next 2 weeks of that initial one. So it's usually when I get that third person where I know, okay, I'm doing another class series. Because I don't like to market. I used to be in sales. It's just a different life I had in this lifetime, but I don't ever want to feel pushy. or feel like, I want people to feel called. I want people to feel like they want to be there. I didn't somehow drag them there or make them feel they needed to be there. That's not why I'm called to do this. I know I'm called to teach because I have had really beautiful experiences with my teaching, and I'm appreciative of that, but I really want it to be organic and rather have people be seeking it than me just being like, oh, I'm going to teach. Will everyone come sign up now? That just doesn't feel authentic to me.
Yes. Earlier you mentioned that the chakras are connected to the clairs. How does that work?
Well, I'll give you an example. So the throat chakra is connected to clairaudience. So if you have a condition, like a thyroid condition as an example, you will likely be disconnected from your clairaudience if you have trauma that walked you into that. So I use that as an example because it's my example. I used to have an autoimmune condition of my thyroid. I healed it, and in this healing, it opened up my clairaudience. I didn't know that that's what was happening at the time. I didn't know that ultimately my throat chakra was healing. It's because I was finding my voice. I was able to heal after breaking ties with my parents. Not right away, but that was a really important part of my journey. Having that was incredible. Another thing, like the solar plexus chakra is connected to our gut instinct. So as you brought up earlier, not everyone can trust that. So if anyone has trust issues, they're probably going to be a little closed off in the solar plexus area. That's your chakra of personal power. So I like to teach people like, hey, if you have these things going on in your life, this is the chakra you want to work to heal. I learned this by living it. So I like to help kind of speed up the process for others of like, hey, here's what I learned the hard way, the long way, but this can be a little faster for you if you want it to be, because I'm the kind of person that likes to heal yesterday. So I get it. I know we're not always meant to have that in our journey of healing, but I like to give people the advantage if I can.
And when you meet people now, do you immediately see their chakras, or is that something you kind of have to take a step back and kind of focus on? Or do you, when you meet people, is it just like you go off your intuition about people? Like, what happens when you first meet people?
Just meet people like socially,
Yeah,
or oh,
yeah,
I'm
or
like,
just like this, like when you met me.
yeah, it will really depend on the person, because some people are more guarded in their energy than others. So if someone has very open energy, I'll feel that very quickly. Anytime we connect with any person, we always connect cords. This could even be a passerby in the street. We just are always having cords connect. So you can tune in further via the cord you're attached with. Like you and I have cords attached right now, especially because we're interviewing. So that will put us in this back and forth. So that would make your energy more open and receptive. I am huge on respecting energetic boundaries, so I don't just go climbing in and reading people. But a lot of times people just, are putting some energy forward already. If there's any kind of darkness attached to somebody, I feel that pretty quickly because that comes across as a heaviness. If someone's been very traumatized, I will feel that because I work with trauma a lot. That's one of my specialties, and I'm trauma informed, so I can feel the feels of that. And then, like I said, some people are really good at blocking. And that in itself is a read. I'll feel this closed off aspect. I'll be like, ooh, someone's been hurt and really needed to close down. So, I always work to respect that. It's just a matter of what I'd be sharing right out of the gate. Not everyone wants their energy read. I certainly don't want to read everybody's energy. So I do my best to treat it as normal as I possibly can. And notice I kind of chuckle as I say normal. What's normal when you do this kind of stuff? I don't know anymore, but I do know when I meet people, and especially the more and more I've continued to heal, I have met the most amazing, beautiful souls. And because like attracts like, and all the healing I did made me a better person, made me a better mother, made me a better wife, made me a better friend. And now I'm attracting that. I'm not attracting toxicity into my life anymore because I'm no longer toxic. And I didn't realize I was in ways because of all the things I dealt with. But the kind of family I had, there was a lot to heal from. Yeah, what I'm finding more and more is the kind of people I'm meeting are also very awakened in their own way. They might not read in the sense that I do, but no one really does the same in any of this work anyways. So it's been really amazing to just be meeting people at this point. So I don't feel so crazy, I guess, as I might have in the past.
Yeah, there's definitely so many people out there that talk about this type of stuff to not make you feel as alone anymore. So that's good. Yeah. So what other programs do you have coming up? Do you have another class coming up?
Well, I'm in the middle of a 5-class series, and what I like to do also is give like free classes every so often. I'm not doing one this month, but I'm probably doing one next month, and I usually like to do a theme. Sometimes I do like inner child healing, inner teen healing, stuff on old souls, stuff on narcissism, because I really like to educate people on the topic of narcissism more and get away from the trendiness it has had with it lately. I hate to say that, but I feel a lot of people have become more flippant at just calling others narcissists or narcissistic. And yes, we live in a very narcissistic world, so I wouldn't say that they're exactly like wrong, but narcissism's a spectrum, and really understanding that spectrum and how it works energetically, I really like to help educate people on. So I do a good amount on that, and so a lot of it is just how I feel guided. So, but for right now, I'm doing this 5-class series. I call it Up Level Your Intuition. And then my next one, I think I'm going to be doing something on feng shui. Because feng shui was kind of one of the earlier things I had because I was so sensitive to the energy of a room. I used to move my furniture around in my room as a kid, not knowing I was trying to better support my energy. It just felt right. So ironic now, but so that might be my next class.
What is an old soul?
I like to describe this in 2 ways. It really depends on how someone is wanting to accept. In one way, it's someone that has lived many lifetimes and they just have this feeling of there's a heavier energy to them, especially Earth lifetimes, because Earth is very dense, so they carry that. And the other way I like to describe it, when we understand that we are living all of these lifetimes at the exact same time, it's hard for people to be like, how are we living all of this? Isn't everyone then an old soul? So an old soul, and when we look at it that way, we'll have more experience. And you just keep finding it over and over and over and over again. And not just Earth lives, but you feel a lot of the Earth lives, because like I said, Earth has that density, but ultimately it's the doing things over and over and over again. We old souls always choose the difficult lessons. That's why they tend to have very challenging lifetimes. They also can really struggle with not wanting to be here. So I get this a lot with parents that find me because their teenager is suicidal. It's a delicate topic, and I'm grateful people trust me with that, because oftentimes I am a last resort. They've done all the therapy, medication, everything. So, but again, it's the heaviness, and it's helping to release that. But in my work, what I've recognized, when there is an old soul, there is a narcissist nearby, and vice versa.
Are narcissists old souls too? Can narcissists be old souls?
They can. They can.
Yeah. Okay.
But not everyone is.
Okay. Cool. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to you? What do you prefer when people reach out to you and try and connect with you?
My website's the easiest. It's my name, chriswasko.com. And people can just kind of explore, and if they want to shoot me an email and say hi, I have plenty of people that do that. I appreciate doing podcasts, because I do receive notes from people who will see me on a podcast and appreciate what they heard. So that's always nice.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to say the same thing I said the first time we met, Chris, is that you have such a beautiful energy. I would not have ever thought that that was your childhood, because I'm putting myself in those shoes, and I just don't know how I would have turned out if that was my childhood. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.